Right now, somewhere in the forests of Alaska, there's a frog frozen solid inside a block of ice. Its heart isn't beating. It isn't breathing. If you hooked it up to the same machines a hospital uses to declare a person dead, every single one of them would agree. Flatline. No pulse, no breath, no brain activity. You could pick it up and it would be hard and cold, like a small stone. And then, a few months later, when the ice melts, that frog will twitch. It'll take a breath. Its heart will start again. And it'll hop away like nothing happened. We're taught that freezing kills you. Ice forms inside your cells. The sharp crystals tear them apart from the inside. And that's the end. For almost every animal on Earth, that's exactly what happens. But a small handful of species broke that rule completely. They freeze on purpose, every winter, and they come back. And they don't all do it the same way. The question is how. And the answer is stranger than just being tough. Let's start with that frog. It's called the wood frog, and it lives farther north than almost any other amphibian, all the way up into the Arctic Circle. When winter comes, it doesn't dig deep underground to escape the cold like most animals do. It barely hides at all. It tucks itself under a thin layer of leaves on the forest floor and waits. And when the temperature drops below freezing, the first ice crystal touches its skin. That single touch sets off a chain reaction. The moment ice starts forming on the outside of its body, a signal fires to the frog's liver. And the liver does something bizarre. It dumps an enormous flood of glucose, sugar, into the bloodstream. We're talking about blood sugar levels that would put a human into a coma, as much as 100 times higher than normal. That sugar races out to every cell in the body before the blood stops moving. Because the blood is about to stop moving. And glucose isn't even the only weapon. The frog also floods its tissues with urea, the same waste compound your body normally tries to get rid of in urine. Here, it's repurposed as a second layer of antifreeze. Here's the part that matters. Those chemicals are antifreeze. They flood into the cells and pack them so tightly that the water inside can't freeze. So the ice is forced to form somewhere else. It forms in the spaces between the cells, out in the open, where it can't do any real damage. Up to 65, even 70% of the frog's total body water turns to ice. Its eyes go white and cloudy. Its body goes rigid, and then the heart slows and stops. This is the work of two scientists, Kenneth and Janet Story, at Carleton University in Canada, who first mapped out this whole process back in the 1980s, and have spent their careers on it since. Now, why does any of this matter so much? Why go to all this trouble to control where the ice forms? To understand that, you have to understand what freezing actually does to living tissue. Think about what happens when you freeze a strawberry and then let it thaw. It comes out soft, mushy, leaking juice everywhere. That strawberry was destroyed, and the cold barely had anything to do with it. What ruined it was the ice. When water freezes inside a cell, it expands and forms sharp crystals, and those crystals slice through the cell membrane like tiny blades. Thaw it out, and everything inside spills out. That's the mush. So the real enemy was never the temperature, it was the ice growing in the wrong place. And once you see it that way, the wood frog's trick makes perfect sense. It never tried to stop itself from freezing. It just made absolutely sure the ice grew outside its cells, not inside them. Keep the crystals on the outside, and the cells ride out the winter intact, locked in suspended animation. Wood frogs in Alaska have been recorded surviving all the way down to -16 degrees Celsius. Frozen for weeks, thawing and refreezing several times in a single winter. No heartbeat through any of it. But freezing is only one way to beat the winter. There's another animal that took the completely opposite approach, and in some ways, it's even harder to believe. The Arctic ground squirrel. During its winter hibernation, this little mammal lets its body temperature drop to -2.9 degrees Celsius. That's below the freezing point of water. It's the only mammal we know of that regularly survives with a body temperature colder than freezing. And here's the twist. Unlike the frog, it doesn't turn to ice at all. So, how does it sit below zero and stay liquid? It super cools. If water is perfectly clean, with nothing floating in it for ice to grab onto, it can drop well below zero and still refuse to freeze. The squirrel takes advantage of this. Before winter, it scrubs its own blood clean of any tiny particle that ice could form around. No dust, no debris, no seed crystals. Its blood gets so pure that it just won't freeze, even below zero. Brian Barnes at the University of Alaska Fairbanks documented this, and it rewrote what we thought a warm-blooded animal could survive. And there's a catch that makes it even stranger. Every 2 or 3 weeks, without ever really waking up, the frozen squirrel starts to shiver. Violently. For 12 to 15 hours straight, it burns energy to heat itself all the way back up to a normal body temperature, around 98 degrees, and then lets itself cool right back down below freezing again. For years, nobody understood why. Then researchers looked at what was happening inside its brain, and they found something remarkable. During deep hibernation, the squirrel's neurons actually shrink. The connections between them wither away, almost like the early stages of brain damage. But when the animal warms up, those connections don't just recover. They regrow, denser than before, sprouting new links beyond what was there to begin with. The brain tears itself down and rebuilds itself over and over, every single winter. And that has scientists paying very close attention. Because in a human, cutting off blood and oxygen to the brain, the way a stroke or a cardiac arrest does, causes catastrophic, permanent damage within minutes. The ground squirrel does something close to that to itself for months, on purpose, and walks away with a sharper brain than it started with. If we could understand how it protects and rebuilds those neurons, it might point the way toward treating strokes, cardiac arrest, even diseases like Alzheimer's. A rodent asleep in the frozen ground might be holding clues to some of the hardest problems in medicine. By now, you might think this ability is rare, some desperate trick a couple of oddball species stumbled into. It's not. Once you know what to look for, it turns up all over the animal kingdom, and each species solved the same puzzle with completely different chemistry. Take the Siberian salamander. It survives being frozen down to around -45 degrees Celsius, far colder than the wood frog can handle. Instead of glucose, it pumps its body full of glycerol, the same compound used in industrial antifreeze. And this is where it tips into legend. There are repeated stories of Siberian salamanders being dug out of the permafrost, frozen for years, some claims stretching to decades, and then thawing out and crawling away. The longest, most extreme versions of that story have never been scientifically confirmed, so treat them with a raised eyebrow. But the core ability is absolutely real. This is an animal built to be frozen for a very, very long time. Then there's a small beetle from the forests of Alaska called Upis. And it may be the most extreme of all of them. In the wild, it shrugs off temperatures around -60 degrees Celsius, and in the lab, it has survived being chilled to nearly -100. What makes it so strange is that it doesn't use glucose or glycerol like the others. It builds its own antifreeze out of a molecule made from sugar and fat wrapped together, something most animals don't produce at all, and that molecule wraps around its cells and stops ice from ever forming inside them. Same problem, a completely different solution, invented independently. A frog, a squirrel, a salamander, and a beetle, none of them closely related, all landing on their own answer to the exact same enemy: ice. And here's where it stops being a nature fact and starts to matter for you. Right now, one of the biggest bottlenecks in all of medicine is that we can't freeze human organs. A donor heart, or a set of lungs, stays usable for only a few hours on ice before the cells fall apart, which turns every transplant into a desperate race against the clock, and means thousands of usable organs get thrown away every year because they can't reach a patient in time. And the thing standing in the way is the exact problem the wood frog cracked millions of years ago: ice crystals wrecking cells. So labs are now studying that frog directly, trying to copy its glucose trick, hoping to one day bank human organs frozen for months and thaw them out still working, the same way that frog thaws out every spring. Between the organ research and the brain research, some of the most advanced medicine on the planet is quietly taking lessons from animals most people have never heard of. So think about what that means. A small frog under a pile of leaves, with no heartbeat and no thoughts, frozen into something that looks completely dead, is sitting on solutions that our best laboratories still can't fully reproduce. It didn't learn it. It didn't design it. It just inherited it, quietly, over millions of winters, the same way the salamander and the beetle and the squirrel inherited theirs. So the next time someone tells you the cold is deadly, remember the frog. Being frozen solid isn't the end of its story. It's just the part where it waits. If you want to dig into the real research behind any of this, it's all linked down in the description.